today's event is an AMA on Ask Me Anything on helping an elderly parent cope with the loss of a spouse. So like Nidhi was telling you, we do not think about it. And sometimes we don't even realize how incapacitating and how complex grief can be. We are dealing with our own grief and we have to take care of the parent who is left behind of sorts, lost his or her partner of several years. And there's so much of emotion, dependence, so many things in it. So that is the reason behind organizing this. I would not really like to take much time talking about the reasoning anymore. Let's, we'd like to tell you about Dr. Amanpreet, who is a clinical psychologist, and she is the assistant professor at Jindal School of Psychology and Counseling at OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat. And Dr. Amanpreet is here today to tell us how to understand grief and how to offer love and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi, and thank you, Nidhi, for organizing such a thought-provoking, event. Because usually we've been talking about coping with grief, how to cope with grief, how to take care of yourself. So there are 14 people out of 16. Okay, so 15 out of 17 who have responded that yes, all right, and 2 said no. The question straight away, are you scared of death? Yes, of course, everyone is. Nope, I don't care. No comments. It makes me anxious.
Dr. Amanpreet, a quick clarification here. Scared of death.
Sure.
I may not be scared of my own death, but I may be scared of a loved one's death.
Okay, that's a 4th category then. Got it. So the 4th category is that we are not scared of our own death, but we are scared of losing our loved ones. So what is the number? Okay, 3. Okay, noted. 4. Great. The last question from my side. You can lower down your hands. Thank you so much. What comes to your mind first when you read the word or you hear the word grief? When you hear grief or you read grief, what is the first word which comes to your mind? You can just type it.
And, sadness again, shock and loss, emptiness. It scares me and I feel I am not prepared to handle it. That's the latest response. The uncertainty.
I think
nothing to look forward to.
So we talked about, are we scared of death? We talked about how many of us have been part of, celebrating life. Most of us have been part of celebrating life because that's considered to be normal. That's considered to be, which is supposed to be done. You need to celebrate life. But sadly, unfortunately, we've not been talking about death also. And probably over a period of time, and especially talking about, our current generation, and I would count people of my age also, and even older than that also, with the medical advancements and, how the society progressed, medicine became better, the witnessing death shifted from houses to hospitals. It became something which was mysterious, and it has always carried a sense of, mystery around it. We want a new life. We want the memories. We want it to stay with us, and we want to be immortals. And that is the reason, we all stick to those symbolisms, all the kathas or all the stories, whichever religion you might be from, which tells us that, yes, either, that particular god or goddess was immortal. This person got the, boom of immortality, which exists. So it always gives us hope that probably, some more years are there, some more years are there. Sadly, we all know that the death is uncertain, definitely. Or I would say, I would rephrase, death is certain, but the time of death is uncertain. And that is something which creates the whole anxiety, the whole, mystic atmosphere around it because we don't know when it's going to happen, what's going to happen. The same thing happened during the COVID time, if you could just relate it with it. So, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is a person you would have heard about her. You would have read the books also. She's written tremendously on death and dying, on grief. This is the quote I wanted to share with all of you after this activity. When we talk about grief, so one thing is very important to understand, when we talk about bereavement, grief, we just use it interchangeably. Bereavement is loss of a significant person in your life. That is bereavement. The psychological reaction to bereavement or the psychological reaction to that loss is grief. The social reaction to that loss is mourning. When you come together as a family, the relatives come to, help you with that grief, to support you. The different kinds of symbolisms or, the rituals which are there that, on 4th day or probably on the 13th day, depending upon whichever culture, region, or religion you belong from. Everybody has their own set of rituals, their own set of, ways to go about how to go about doing the funeral. That is not actually just to honor the dead person, but it is also to help the family who's grieving. And that is the reason, it's not a shagun or apshagun, which is the words used in our society very frequently, that you shouldn't be cooking, you shouldn't be doing this. That has a meaning attached to it, that, a family who's had a loss, they would not be able to probably, do the cooking for others, to handle financial stuff or handle the certificate matters. And till the time we used to have a very joint family kind of a system, people were able to, help each other, the interdependency. But as and when, the nuclear families are forming, you can just look at past so many years, the trends are changing in the data in terms of the demographics. We have more people coming in and medicine advancements is there and people are moving out of the cities. I'm talking about, all the younger generations right now, or even the elderly right now, they would have been probably working somewhere or they would have retired from some job. They would have shifted their places away from where their hometown was. Everybody is just, scattered all across the globe. So internet does join you. You can just simply video call somebody and get connected with somebody very easily. But at the same time, that physical presence is not there, right? So when we talk about grief, as I said, it's a natural response to loss. Any loss can cause grief. Now, you need to understand one thing. Loss is not always physical. The parental loss, when we're talking about today's talk, it may not always be physical. There are different kinds of families which are there. Families where the parent whom you would have lost might have been abusive, might have been alcoholic. Maybe this was a dysfunctional family. Not everything was happy. You could have had great memories with them, or probably the memories were not that great also. Usually it is seen when, it's, you have the unhealthy relationships as well, which is seen all across, and it's normal, it's okay to have those kind of relationships also, because we can't control everybody's behavior or actions. But when you lose that person, the loss of the person who used to be there, whether functional or dysfunctional, that creates that void, that emptiness in your life that, yeah, but these things were there, but other things were okay. These things were there, but other things were okay. I miss that person. At least that person used to take care of the finances. At least that person used to take care of the whole house or take care of the kids, right? And all these things which you never did, the other person had taken the role of that particular, head or controller of those particular tasks. You start missing those things because the reason being, we never talked about death. What would happen if you tell that person that, you need to be prepared? We never prepare ourselves or anybody else for the death. As I said, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she's talked about 5 different stages, and I'm pretty sure that you all must be very well aware of this. We call it DAPTA: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. But the actual road you get is it's a roller coaster ride. You never go from, denial to anger that, now this stage will come, then this stage will come. It's not like that. And that is the reason I said, in the beginning, because of the lot of uncertainty around it, this is what happens. And it becomes scary that, how will we handle it? We don't know what stage is it. When you have jaundice, you get yourself tested, this particular medicine is going to be there. That is going to work for so many days, and that's it. And you'll be okay. And these are the fruits you need to take. That's the lifestyle you need to follow. You'll be okay. When we're talking about, when we're talking about emotional issues, emotional disturbances, grief is different from depression. For depression, you need to have certain symptoms, for a certain period of time, and that is usually prolonged. For grief now, in the newer diagnostic classification, they have said that, prolonged grief disorder is something they have included. So for about a year or two, it is okay to have symptoms of, sadness, the shock, and, maybe you'll be somewhere going on in between denial to acceptance, in between, till the time the acceptance actually comes. Honestly, talking about it, acceptance doesn't really come, in terms of the cognitions. For example, we have, so many people answer that we are not scared of our loss. We are not scared of our own death, but we are scared of losing the other person's. That means the acceptance is there intellectually that, yes, we are not immortals. Yes, this is what's going to happen. But emotionally, we have never processed it. And that is very, very, very difficult thing to do because we all are human beings. As I always say, we can't be monks. We have to function in this, world. And to be scared, either it would be too maladaptive or you will find people who just go reckless, get into, so much of thrill and everything else without taking care of anything else. I think that is also one extreme of maladaptive behavior, what doesn't help you live your life in a certain way. The healthy behaviors, we're going to talk about it. Healthy behavior is not something which has been taught to us. But yes, we have lived, our life in a certain way. What we can do is we can probably try to inculcate the skills we'll be talking about, the do's and don'ts I'll be talking about in some time. We'll try to inculcate that on a daily basis with different people and try to, practice those things in our daily lives. And only then we could see a change. Otherwise, it would remain at a very intellectual level that, yes, we know that. Yes, we know that, but we are scared. And talking about it, the loss is always a loss. Nobody can undo that loss, whether for your parent, whether for yourself, or for some other person, whether it's a physical loss or a psychological loss, because there are families, there are places, when the parent is not there as a function of a parent. The parent is there just for the sake of name, or they would have abandoned the family because of XYZ reasons. That is also grief. That is also a psychological grief because the parent is no more there for them. Okay. As I talked about the grieving process, so one of the questions is also that how to recognize that, we are grieving. You don't really need to recognize that whether you're grieving or not. Yes, but people do ask me a question that, is it okay to cry? I'm crying too much. Or people will come and tell me that, I'm not even crying at all. I don't feel anything because there's too much on my head. Both the situations are quite evidently, present over there because of, people may not be there to support you. It might be too overwhelming for them, or maybe they're just not there because you're in a different country, you're in a different state. So, you're just all by yourself on your own, handling death certificate, handling finances. Half of the times, people don't even know, where exactly the person had invested, whether, a woman or a man, where exactly is the money, where exactly something else. I'll tell you guys, when I started working in this area, I myself have had a personal experience, when I lost my maternal grandfather, who was quite close to me, very close to me, and he had passed away all of a sudden just in front of me. And that was 14th of April, I remember, 2008. And I was there to celebrate, we because I'm a Sikh, so we celebrate Baisakhi. And I was there with him, and it just happened. I did not know how to react, how to act, as an adolescent, and I was just wondering what to do, what not to do. Everybody was crying, and I was not. It's only later I realized, because after 2 days of that event, I had my exams, final exams. And that was something I thought, I'll do my best and I'll do well, and, I'll honor him. I'll not eat the food for this, till the time the funeral happens, the symbolisms you do to honor the person. And post that, I started, understanding and realizing that I had gone through that complicated grief, which we call it, complex grief. I was not able to express my emotions. I did not know what to do. I never witnessed such kind of a thing. I never thought this would happen. We all know this can happen, but we never want to say goodbyes to our parents, to our elderly, or even to our own selves. How many of you are prepared, if something happens today, not out of fear, I'm saying. There's one thing where people are hyper vigilant, they keep on doing the stuff. And they think that, what if this happens today? What if that happens today? That gives anxiety. I'm talking about a very healthy state where you are aware that anything can happen to anybody at any given moment of time. How prepared are you to handle that particular thing? Maybe you'll have some money left for that emergency fund. The whole family should know about it, right? You are aware that, because just like, my first question, we are aware when a life is coming, we are aware that so many things can happen. Similarly, we need to be aware that when somebody passes away, somebody leaves us, who's very, very dear to us, what's going to happen and what may not happen. And these are the things to be talked about. Let's say, so I'm talking about certain number of years ago from now. Since I'm trying to make it very interactive, you could always read all these things anywhere else also. I told my parents that, I'm thinking that, probably it would be a good idea to donate the organs. Probably it would be a good idea to do this. If, let's say, something happens to me, I'm on this stage, probably you should do this. And they all looked at me, that what's wrong with me, why am I talking like that? Versus a year back when COVID had struck, the way people have started talking about it, that has improved. But I would say that has a tinge of fear and anxiety, that they know that it can happen to anybody, right? And now it's the time they need to know that, where all the passwords are kept, where all, so at least one person should be aware about the same. This is something I'm talking about, how to prepare yourself, right? So now we're going to talk about when this has already happened and you really don't know what to do and what to figure out. But I would say the take-home message will always be, because we are also here and we also have our loved ones around us. We have the other parent also, right? Whether psychological level or physical level. It would be a good idea to start talking about these things and to have a dialogue which could be healthy. And trust me, you'll see a difference once you do that. And there is nothing right or wrong in terms of how you grieve, how you express yourself. These are the, symptoms you would say, and more than symptoms, I would say the signs, because this is not a disorder. Grief is normal, it's natural. Yes, we say that about a year or so, you can just, have a look at it. Emotionally, these are the, terms written over there. I think some of these terms were also mentioned while I was asking that what is the first thing which comes to your mind when we talk about grief? Different circumstances, as I said, it could be losing a loved one. The loved one could be the parent, could be a child, could be a sibling, could be anybody else, right? A friend or a colleague as well. And sometimes, even if you would have lost a stranger, what happens is when you read about, you witness, you hear that somebody has passed away, or somebody has died, or somebody is no more, that reminds us of our own mortality. So when we say that, yes, we are scared of losing our loved ones, that also has the component of that we all are immortals and there is a sense of loss around us, right? So this is something which I talked about, from my personal experience, that what is a complicated grief and where all. So risk factor doesn't mean that it has to be the necessary condition. It just means it could happen in such cases. Let's say if somebody has a vulnerability for certain kind of mood disorders or anxiety disorders, they might be more prone, not always, but maybe more prone. If there's a past history of trauma or loss, because psychologically speaking, this is also equivalent to, a big loss, a trauma, which can add on to your previous traumas if not worked upon. There could be financial hardships also. For example, let's say the person you lost was the breadwinner of the family, and nobody else knew what to do, how to handle the finances, how to run certain errands, how to handle, the person might have certain shares, certain property, certain losses, certain debts. You don't know about it because people don't talk about it because we think we are going to live. Today is the day and nothing will happen today. And that's where the shock hits us. I think I've talked about this, that, where lies the problem? The problem lies in all these things because talking about death itself is considered to be taboo. There's something called thought action fusion when we talk about certain disorders and, psychological disturbances, psychiatric disorders. We say that, when you think something, it might happen as if, it's some magical thinking happening over there. But sadly, we don't have so much of power to do that. We are not superhumans or God. We're simply human beings. So talking about death will not cause anybody's death for sure. And that is more acceptable at a particular span of life. That means these, people just ask this question. I'm pretty sure you would have come across that, or you would have probably said this thing all by yourself that, oh yeah, it was a natural death. Yeah, the person is elderly. That's okay. No, I mean, it was a loss for the other person. And most of the times, people do not know what to say when somebody is grieving. It is too frightening for them. They don't know how to handle the situation. Whether a parent, whether a sibling, whether a relative, they just struggle whether I should call or not. Should I message? What should I message? What should I say? Should I go and sit next to the person? It might remind them of the memories, which I should not do. So I'm talking about all these things which you might be even struggling with, right? You can drop down your messages on the chat box also, that what are the things you go through, the challenges, that, what should we talk about? What should we not talk about? What is going to happen? What is the other person going to think about? The other person looks okay. My parent looks okay. If I'll say something, they might get frightened. They might, think that, I'm trying to trigger them. No. So the very first thing would be, if we're talking very specifically, you've lost an elderly parent, you would have got certain responsibilities on your head. You may or may not be in the same city, let's say. The very first thing is you need to accept the fact that this has happened. You cannot undo that. It is a big loss for you as well as for the person. You would have probably spent lesser time with the person, probably the parent has spent, whether that was a functional relationship or a dysfunctional relationship. I'm repeating this thing because many a times the kids who would have probably, processed the whole thing in their heads, we are looking from this end as, children, because you all feel that, you don't owe anything to anybody, anybody doesn't owe anything to you. That is perfectly fine. But what happens is when you were small, these were the people who had taken care of you. And you have that understanding also. So I'm not talking about moralistic standards or anything like that. I'm simply saying you have an understanding that yes, certain things were taken care of by, certain person with whom you may not have had good relationship with. But what happens is when you lose that person, let's say you were not talking to that person, you had a fight with that person, more chances that you might go into complex or complicated grief because there were more things left unsaid, undone, right? Whether it was from your parents' side or from your side. So can we be all very, happy-go-lucky all the time? No, that's not possible. You can't just be pretending to be sweet all the time with, nice, shallow words. What we can do rather is, so very first thing I would say, before addressing somebody else's pain, you need to acknowledge that even you have that pain. You are a different person, the other person is different. Everybody else is different. The way we cope is different. We need to acknowledge that and we need to respect that. We need to accept that grief, the psychological reaction to that loss, it can trigger many different unexpected emotions, right? And you need to understand that this process will be unique to you, will be subjective to you. There is no normal set standard process of, grieving. We talk about that, this is the standard process. After some time, it will be over. No, it's never like that. Seek out a face-to-face support with whoever you can confide into, whoever cares about you, or whoever you think cares about you. Support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically. This is all itself, it's a self-care regime, in general, to take care of yourself during, when you're grieving for anybody else's death. But let's talk about what we are talking here in this particular, talk. How can I help my parent handle loss of a spouse? We need to be okay with silences. And this would apply to any other person also who would have probably, could be your relative, colleague, whoever it is. We always say that, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry to know that. I mean, you need not be sorry about that. This was nothing to do with you. And there's another thing also, when I say be okay with silences and, be with them, that just doesn't mean that you'll go over there and you'll just blabber, different kinds of suggestions, because as human beings, we tend to engage into giving suggestions when we have nothing to say. And especially in our society, if it's a kid, we'll talk about the school because we have nothing else to ask, nothing else to talk about. Our communication skills are not that great, right? Or all of us are not that, trained psychologists. We don't know what to say. And we end up asking what could be appropriate, what could not be appropriate. Let's say somebody we looked at, oh, marriageable age, we'll ask about whether you're married or not. Then we'll talk about, oh, what are your studies? What are you planning to do? Then if somebody is married, are you planning for a child or not? Then somebody, gets older. Okay, are you planning to have a shift in the job? Where are you investing and things like that? And, how you're taking care of yourself, the kids and grown up. That's how the questions will keep changing. But when we are sitting with a person or talking to a person who's recently had a big loss in their lives, his or her, we don't know. We fall short of words. We don't know what to tell them. You don't need to tell them anything. Simply hand holding, going over there, sitting next to them. If not sitting next to them, being in contact with them. Let's say you might be, away from the house, away from the city, and you're working somewhere else. We do tend to find time in the whole day to eat, to sleep, to do, to accomplish our certain tasks. We need to also remember and embrace the fact when we lose a person, we suddenly realize the importance of that person. That yes, these things were not okay, but these things were there. And the person needs to do it, and the person needs to take care of it. So probably a good idea to start taking care of those people, to start addressing so that you will not have a complicated grief afterwards. Just like, when we prepare for pregnancies, we prepare for life, we know, we are aware that, these many conditions can happen. These can be the situations, and that is how I need to be careful about. This is what I need to do, right? Similarly, in case of even if, so now you have one parent who's still there, or probably, somebody else, that person is still there. What you could do with them would be give your time. Time doesn't mean that you have to tell them, don't cry, please don't cry, I can't look at you, as Nidhi was stating very correctly in the beginning, or be strong. You might be a strong-willed person. Strong-willed doesn't mean that you will not grieve. Probably you have not faced that reaction when you lose a loved one, when you lose a partner, life partner with whom you have spent your whole life with. And when we are talking about our elderly, I think they never actually lived alone. They could have gotten married quite early. They have lived in their family, and then straight after that, they started living with their life partner, and they had kids, and they had you. And what you have to do is, one parent is gone, the other parent is there. Be with them. Even if you can you just call them up 2 or 3 times of the day. What to do, what to ask, I'll tell you. And just read the things which are written over here. Listen more, talk less. I think we all talk about it. I'll just avoid these phrases. Please do not say it out loud, even if it comes to your mind. So be aware about it. Acknowledge the fact that this is not going to help anything. This will not help the person who's grieving. So, everything happens for a reason. And many times people say these things also. They will check about, oh, how did the death happen? And they will say, oh, was it natural? Was it this age? Okay, then still, the loss is a loss. So you know what to say. You could probably ask the person rather when you're messaging or talking to them, are you holding up okay? Ask the person, how is that person handling the grief? Let's say, even after a year, till 1 year anniversaries, people are usually, okay with the fact people will keep on asking probably the relatives or the other people or even the son or the daughter. But after 1 year, people start thinking, yeah, normal process of grief is over. Okay, now we don't need to ask. People stop asking. The second death anniversary, third anniversary, those are also still the same. They will also hold the importance forever, always. I think I've talked about this. So what you can do is be specific with your questions. Check upon them regularly. Ask your parents and how they're doing, how they are dealing with it. Do they still remember, let's say your father or your mother? Ask those specific questions. Ask them. They are difficult for you, so you need to also process it yourself well and ask them this. What offer tangible assistance means is when we were talking about that, each parent had their own role in the family. Somebody would be taking care of, let's say, the clothes and everything else. So even if you are there, let's say you're there, try to take care of those tasks as much as you can, or probably divide it in between, your siblings. They never thought about it. They never it's okay. I mean, they are different people and they might be too fearful. That is also a maladaptive reaction, by the way, not taking responsibility. All right, it's not just being too fearful and hypervigilant, which is maladaptive. The other end is also equally maladaptive. So the healthy behavior would be, if you are there, how much ever you can take care of things, do that, because that is going to stay with you. You're doing those activities and try to tell the person that you're there for them and you love them. How often we say it very easily that we hate you've not done this, and it's easy to criticize, it's easy to displace our emotions on our loved ones, specifically, on our close relationships. But how often or on an everyday basis do you do this? Do you show them your concern? Do you show that you love them? Do you show them that yes, you really consider their presence as something which is very, very important? That itself is soothing. That itself is a big pillar of support for the person who's had a big loss. And because the person knows now that, yes, I have somebody to look after me, not just out of some responsibility or obligation, but that person wants to do it. And that's totally okay, even if you're not getting anything out of it also. So it could be either you could appoint somebody to take care of them, or you could do certain to-do list, right? Because you cannot expect the person, maybe it was 2 years, 3 years, you cannot expect the person who has lived a life in a certain way to suddenly change, right? We can expect a great change at, age-wise also, there's a lot of, because the brain wiring age, the way you pick up certain things, the way you learn, it becomes slow. It is there, but it becomes slow. So you need to be aware about that and respectful of that also. Sometimes, the parent could start just becoming irritable, just trying to show you a way that, I don't want anybody's help. I can take care of my own self. That might also be a cry for help. It would not harm you to check upon them on an everyday basis. That's what I'm, talking about on an everyday, what you can do. So showing up is something which you can do. Either you do video call, either you do the other way around, or you have contacts with your neighbors, or have somebody around who can also go in physically and check upon them, if in case you're not living in the same city. Educate yourself about grief, which of course, I'm sure, some of you are already doing that. Hold hands of your parents, hug them, put your hand above their heads rather than saying something which would not be meaningful, which would actually cause more harm. You could rather do these gestures could be done. Acknowledge special days, which we call barsi, I think, in some of the, cultures. It could be anniversaries, birth anniversary, death anniversary, their marriage anniversary, right? You could do certain things. When we say plan ahead for holidays to honor the dead person, it means, see, the day itself could act as a trigger for many emotions. The person could feel down. The parent may say that, just ask the person, how are they feeling? Just put a reminder on your phone. Let's say you're very busy. It's okay. Just put a reminder on your phone then. That's okay. And ask the person, did they have any dream? What are they doing? What are they planning to do? There are ways to honor the dead. Whether you had a dysfunctional relationship or a functional relationship, you can get involved with your parent who's living, and you can ask the parent, what the other parent whom you have lost, what their likes or dislikes were, what they would have wanted to do, and what exactly their passions were. You could get yourself involved in some form. It could be some charity. It could be going to the, church, going to the Gurdwara, or going to the temple. It could be anything, right? All these things which we have been doing as symbolisms have been part of, how to process your grief, how to help our own selves only, right? So those are not just for the sake of, doing certain rituals. There's a meaning attached to it. You can generate your own ideas. When we talk about, so there was Dr. Kenneth Doka who talked about rituals of continuation. Rituals of continuation talk about that you need not be scared of the person you have lost or the objects belonging to that person. You need to honor that person. You have those memories. It's okay to talk to that person. I mean, there are differences, of course, having hallucinations and doing it otherwise. So let's say you've had a great win or a promotion, or you achieved something in your life. Celebrate it with your parent who's living, and at the same time ask the parent that, how would the other person would have liked it, and what else we can do so that I'm somewhere communicating that with that person. With the kids, we tell them that, look at the star, the person is the star, and it's easier said than done, of course. So you could cook the meal the person used to like. You can cry with that. That's okay. You could remember the person in ways. Nowadays, with social media, with Facebook, Instagram, all these sites, or even WhatsApp, this WhatsApp story also is there, which is there for 24 hours. You could select some nice memories, go back to your albums, go back to your phone camera, photographs. If you don't have photographs, let's say at least one photograph would be there, passport size, whatever. Start to write something about it, post it online, share it with your friends. Let's say you might be alone all by yourself, whether your parent or you. Ask the person, if they would want your help to write the caption, share it with others, right? Because times have changed, maybe the living arrangements have changed, but people are still there, if not offline, online. That's the way you could do it. There was one person who shared that, this woman who had lost her mother, the father was there. So she had started doing certain tasks which the mother used to do, the cooking and everything, asking the father, what all things he would like to have in what proportions. You cannot just do it perfectly, appropriately. You cannot replace the person, but you can replace the tasks, the activities which will help and give space to the other person or to the parent process their emotions at least, or just express them, without worrying about how do I take care of my pension, how do I take care of this. And people who are still over there, right, or even my age, anything can happen. Like, I'm sitting here giving a talk, this roof can fall off. I mean, this is the truth. But I need to be aware and okay and peaceful with one thing, that everybody knows once I'll be gone, everybody will know that, these are the places I've kept these things at. This is where I've done, this investment. This is where, you need to go and do certain things. And for that, extra efforts are needed. You need to talk about these difficult things also, and be okay with the fact that people who are in your life, even if you don't have time, so we can make time for, it's just about the priority. We make time for our, tasks to be done, for our food, for party, or for relaxation. These are the things, these are the people you could spend some time upon also, because when the time comes, whether it's for you, for the other person, the complications involved will get reduced for sure. So whatever you can do on the everyday basis, please do that, whether it's in terms of helping the other person, making the other person learn something else, certain tasks or activities where the person could function even if you are there or not there. Right. So it's not that you might lose, you might end up losing the elderly. You might end up, something can happen to you also, which is okay. Right. So you just need to be prepared for the same, not out of fear. That's what I'm saying, but in a very healthy way. Then there's a transition also. So some people also write, letters. Some people just want to keep the room as it is. That is okay. That doesn't mean the person is not moving on. It is okay. Sometimes the person needs more time than the other people, and that's okay, right? And there is nothing, unfortunate or anything inauspicious in terms of keeping the items in your house. There's nothing like that. The memories will always stay with you. So honor those memories, honor the other person, talk about the person. We all are gray individuals, right? We all have positive and negatives, both the things within us. And we need to respect that. So honor the positive things, honor those traits which were really, really, great for you. And you could write letters also, which could be very personal for the, parent, or you could ask the parent, you can help the person, your parent, to write something in their own language, even if you understand or not, it's okay. That really helps, because many times we feel that the other person can read our minds, especially in the close relationship, but that's not how it is. We can't read the minds. Even the psychologist cannot read your mind. So many things are said, they are just left unsaid, they're left undone. So you could write a letter to them. Then, identification among group. The last thing is nothing but talking about how you can organize, online memorials also, let's say on certain particular date. You could ask on the group, even if there are 3 or 4 people, you're talking about that person, that's more than enough. Yeah. So it's just what I've just talked about, rituals, these rituals of continuation, they provide us, these are acts of meaning. There's some purpose associated with it. And when you know that there's this purpose associated with it, it is quite impactful. There was also one more question that, when do we know that when to seek professional help? So I would just quickly tell everybody, because the Indian society, our society, we are not very, very aware about, because mental health is, so we'll talk about physical health, but nobody really talks about mental health. Physical health, it's very easy to talk about that, yeah, we have blood pressure, yeah, we have thyroid, and they'll happily just pop up one pill every day and with the symptoms, and they'll talk about it. It's considered to be normal. So mind is also part of your own. Mind and body work together. So either it could be the physical health, it could be the emotional disturbances, it could be the finances, whatever, right? So many stressful factors are there. Your mental health is also important, and it is okay to seek help. So what you need to keep in mind is, so a person who has had, MBBS and then MD psychiatry, that person would be a psychiatrist who would prescribe medications. When I said that, I'm a clinical psychologist, so I've done my MPhil in clinical psychology, and I have my RCI degree, right? Just like you have MBBS degree for a doctor who's prescribing medication. So we take 1 hour long sessions for a couple, number of sessions are there. It could vary from 20 to 100. Then you have psychiatric social workers also who do the, masters in social work, and then MPhil in PSW. Then you have counseling psychologists who handle the milder problems, the adjustment levels, and I'm sure the grief also, right? So anytime you could seek professional help, that will give you some sort of support, some sort of, skill building activity. When you feel like that life isn't worth living, it's helpless, hopeless, there's, there are no future goals, that's also a time, and definitely post 1 year of the loss. When we have the suicidal ideations also, which is more related with the survivor guilt, I say that, we've lost the other person. What are we doing in this life? I wish I would have gone with the person. So these things are normal and natural for a year. That's what I'm saying. You no need to worry more about it. But since The support may not be there. You might not be around that person all the time. It is okay to seek professional help. So you need not have a certain criteria to seek professional help. I have many of my patients who come to me just for their personality development, just for the sake of they don't have any other place to go to and confide into, and that's okay. And they don't have any disorder yet. That is also totally okay. Remember, it is absolutely certain that we will die, and it is uncertain when or how we will die, which we talked about already. It is okay to seek support from a mental health professional. Talk about death, your fears, anticipations, what do you expect, what you're not. Even if, let's say, one parent is gone, the other parent is still there. And, for yourself, for that parent, honor the other person who has left, honor each other also. And be kind and stay connected with each other.
Questions asked by, just a moment. One of the questions asked by Mr. Srinivasan is that he says, I find that some elders have accepted the concept of death much more easily than expected and are able to come back to normalcy and also guide and help youngsters. So how do they do it?
I think that's one thought which can come that, what they might be doing. So I think, Mr. Srinivasan, I would say that one thing is we all are different people. Everybody has their own set of, coping skills, certain strategies. Some things are just inherent and some things are there which we learn from the other environment. And we could have, a parent, who could be elderly, who would have probably witnessed certain things, who would have learned certain ways. And we also see that, spiritual strategies are also there. Some people who are more spiritual, it is seen in research. We see it in research, or people who take care of their own selves. So they will be better able to handle the loss of their spouse or loss of, let's say, a child also, right? But we cannot always correlate and say that that is a necessary condition, that they might be doing something for themselves, and that is the reason they are able to handle it. And also that is not equivalent to saying that they are strong people. Yes, please.
Question. Is it right to acknowledge anniversaries or birthdays as it causes more pain and trauma to my mother and even to us as children?
Yes, I think specifically, when we talk about certain traumatic deaths, when it was just full of, which we call it as suffering, or it could be a suicide case, it could be something which was very, very sudden or very, very traumatic. More times it is seen that the family members would just not talk about it because it was just too much for them to handle. That time also they could not process it, and post that also it stays with them. When we say something is complicated or complex, that is not associated with the timing of the grieving process. That means you're not able to process your grief till date, that you're not able to talk about it. That's an indication. You're not able to process it well. You're not able to even remember the person you've lost. So you would have loved that person a lot, but then you just can't talk about it because it reminds you, the anniversaries remind you of how you lost that person. They don't remind you of that person. So probably I would say that it is actually, I would not say right or wrong, because you can decide what your right or wrong process is. You can decide your own processes. That's what, Rituals of Continuation talks about. You can be creative with how you want to connect with the person you've lost, or how you want to help the person, who's still there. If that is not okay, that is an indication to the whole family that you've not really, processed it for a long period of time. And you need to sit together probably, when you have memorials, when you have, online, for example, I had also lost, just like everybody else, a very, young person in my family during the second wave. The person was just 25 years old. That's what I'm saying, just 25 years old. Whether it's a person that's 75 years old or 50 years old or 25 years old, it's a loss, right? Because those many number of years you've, known the person, that person was dear to you. So you have certain memories. How you want to honor the person, it is up to you.
Dr. Kaur, the question was from my end. I just want to speak because actually the question for acknowledgement of the anniversaries was important because I just lost my father this month on 15th. And it was very sudden because there was no suffering, there was nothing. It was just like in a minute and he's not there.
Yeah.
So acknowledgement, like as you rightly mentioned throughout the session, that at least a year it does take, and if you're crying over things or anything. So in this year, right, we all have, whether it's we have 4 children together and my mother being alone, we have our right from birthdays to anniversaries, everything for this month. My youngest brother had his birthday just in matter of 5 days after my dad passed away.
Sure.
But everything brings that thing out back. So should we even acknowledge it in front of my mother? Because obviously it's still not processed in any one of us, nor is it
I would
sent.
say, what's your name?
Dr. Karishma.
Okay, so Dr. Karishma, I would suggest try doing it once. I'm
No,
not
we
saying
did,
this is the
and she
best
did
way.
break. She did break. We
That's
did it because my
that's
elder
what.
sister's
So we
anniversary
keep
was there.
avoiding. We keep
We keep,
avoiding
yeah,
the breakdowns.
yeah,
We keep avoiding to see the other person, that we think that we are triggering something. It's too
yeah,
recent for you. It's a very,
yeah,
very recent, and the loss for you, right? So you can't
yes,
expect for yourself also, for the other person also, to start thinking in a very, healthy way or in a very normal way, which we say. So that is okay. Give yourself, give the family some time, give her some time. It would be a good idea to probably, all 4 of you could check upon her on a daily, day-to-day basis. Ask her if she would need somebody to talk to, right? And that is
okay,
okay if she would need to talk to somebody. Probably I would suggest, Rashmi and Nidhi also to think about, grief support groups where, some people can come together and a facilitator could be there probably. And all of you could simply talk about, or, in terms of honoring the person who had left. So specific to your question, Dr. Karishma, I would just say, give her some time. It is okay to trigger. It is okay to talk about it, because most of the times we just leave it, somewhere in the space, in the void, that, what if we trigger something? We shouldn't be talking about certain things. I think it is okay to talk about your father. It is okay to talk about certain things associated with him. If somebody's having a breakdown, let them have the breakdown. Be with them. Don't suggest anything. Just be with them, whether on video call, whether in presence with them. Just be with them. It would be good on a longer period of time, I would say.
but it's okay for her to keep crying because it does take a toll on her health. Where you mentioned, obviously, physically, we from last 2 weeks we all have gone through all those physical symptoms that you have
But the
shown
way
over the
you
slide.
were with your father, she has lived and spent more time and energy
Yes,
and, number of years with him. She made
yes,
the whole family with him. You need to
yes,
consider it from her end also. Why wouldn't the person cry? Probably that was her whole life, right? So it
yes.
is okay. What you can ensure is be with her during that time.
Thank
Okay?
you so
Be
much.
with
Okay,
her during
thank you.
that time.
Thank you so much. One, very quick question. Since we spoke about dependence between spouses, each one having their different roles, and we talked about, how none of us think or talk about death. Does it
Yeah.
make sense as children for us to encourage our parents to wean off this dependence in whatever ways they could? Probably give them some, methods to do that and learn to take care of themselves more wholly, in a more whole way.
I
Is
think that could be done over a period of time, but in the beginning, it would be a good idea for the kids, for the children to, ask them, talk to them that, what are the areas you would want me to come in and you would want my help. The parent may say, no, I'll manage, no, I'll do this. But more and more you'll talk, you will see the parent will say, yeah, can you take care of probably this particular aspect? I've never done this. Can you take care of this particular thing I can do? Because if you'll not have the talk or the dialogue, most of the things, that's what I'm saying, most of the times, this is what we have learned, that, you should have known that. That's what, couples also talk about. You should have known that. You've lived with me for so many years. Don't you know that? Don't you remember that? And even the parent or the kids will have this dialogue. So we need to remember and accept the fact that we cannot mind read. We are human beings. Some people are good in remembering, some people are not, and that's okay. So you'll have to say those things out loud, whether it's saying that you love the other person, you miss the other person, you really care for the other person. Sometimes it's good to say those things. So that's what I'm saying. Start with people who are living so that you would not have the complicated reactions later on. Now, I would say start with helping around with the task for the parent. let's say, if you would have had a recent loss, let's say, for example, you could, without asking, you could do certain things. And as soon as, you feel the person is settling in, that's what I'm saying. Loss will never be, you cannot undo a loss. But what happens is the settling in, the processing of grief becomes better. The way you address the memories become better, right? More and more, we find it that it is acceptable to talk about somebody you have lost. It is acceptable and it is okay to honor the person you have lost. More things you'll see, and some activities it is okay to take charge of. So Rashmi asking, answering the question specifically, it is okay to take charge of certain things. And it is okay to ask the person, are they comfortable if you'll teach them certain things? Are they comfortable if they would want to do it themselves? Talk, ask, be very specific with your questions.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And thank you everyone for attending.